So I think today we want to talk a bit about time and punctuality and how that can vary from culture to culture. And I know that can be quite different depending on the culture and the values underneath that.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes I love what you said before about, let's say in Portuguese, the way we say I am late in Portuguese, actually, because we have two different ways of saying. So it's not a permanent thing. It's not who you are. It's an action. So being late, it's not so heavy as sometimes I see here in England, because it can create huge conflicts. Depends on the situation if you come late as well.
And in the English language, we actually say I am. So I am late, or she is late, or they are. It's actually part of your identity. It's part of who you are. It's your actual state of being, because it is such a deep value. But the reason for that isn't just because we love tasks and production and getting things done. It's actually a way that we communicate respect. So, for example, if I am going to meet a friend at 4 o'clock and I know that she's going to be meeting me at this location, she's going to be waiting for me. So for me, it's important that I'm there at the right time to show her that I respect her time and I respect her schedule and her day. And that's a way that we communicate that respect.
It's interesting because for us, depends, of course, we're not trying to generalize here, but depends on situations. So let's say in where I come from, so you might be late for certain things, but you probably never late for other things. Let's say school. In schools, you have a time to arrive at school, and if you don't arrive at that time, the gates will be closed. So that is no expectation. There is no time for you to be late. Or if you're going to make a test for to go to university, to be part of a university, if you don't come on time, you're not going to do the test, and you're only going to have to do again next year. Do you understand? But when it comes to social things, if I'm invited to your house, if you invite me to come and eat with you, I think that is even some kind of an expectation that you would come late.
Yeah.
Not really come on time. And again, I was thinking, why is that? And then I realized that actually it's because I kind of value all of your work, and I expected that might be some last minute things that might come up, and I don't want to come and being a burden on you by coming a little bit fashionably, as you like to say.
Fashionably.
Yes, it's almost like giving you space to deal with any last minute things. That's what comes to my mind. Instead of coming in and maybe you have to rush and do things at last minute.
Which is interesting, and I know that's something we'll talk about later on too, about hospitality, but just the value of that there's an assumption that the host is going to need to prepare a lot of things. And I have friends from Pakistan that kind of taught me that as well, that when I go to their home now, I'm intentional that I'm going to get there 15 minutes or so after the time they said, because of that reason, because they want to be able to prepare everything to be able to receive me well.
Absolutely. I was invited to, here in England, I was invited to a birthday party from this family who was from Asia.
Okay.
And it was so funny because being in England for so long, I kind of learned that if someone invites you to come to a birthday party, you have like a time to arrive and a time to leave.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and again, things are changing in Brazil now as well, but when I was growing up, normally a party, you had a time to start, but then you didn't have a time to finish. So then you could come between half an hour late to an hour late, and it would be completely acceptable.
Sure.
But here you have to come on time. So then I was an Asia family, and then I came there and I came right on time. They asked me to arrive at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I was knocking their door. And then when they just invite me to come in, and I realized that I was the only one there. There was nobody there. And I was like, oh, maybe I understood the time wrong. She said, no, it's fine. It was 5 o'clock. Anyway, I was there, but I think the other guest only arrived about an hour later.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I was there for 1 hour, with my whole family feeling, what am I gonna
So
do?
awkward.
Absolutely. And I was, but they were completely nice and fine
course,
and all
yeah,
of
of
those
course.
things. But then I realized, like, okay, now I understood. So that was this expectation,
Yeah.
they gave me a time, but actually that was an expectation that I would probably give them some time before.
So that's interesting. I'm not exactly sure how it is in England. I'd have to think about that. But in the US, we do have that kind of party, but you specify that it's that kind of party. So that would be called an open house. So actually, when I graduated high school, I had a open house graduation party, which just meant from this time to this time, drop in anytime. So you could come at the beginning, at the end, or for any amount of time in between, and that's totally fine. But you would only assume that it's that way. It would only be that way if it's specifically said, this is an open house party. Otherwise, as you said, it's from this time to this time.
And even in Brazil, I would say that that's what we talk about culture. So it depends on the church. Each church or each denomination, Catholic Church or Baptist Church or Presbyterian or Maranatha, anyway, different churches, they have their own culture about
Yeah.
punctuality as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
Some churches, they're very strict about punctuality. What time? The
Very
time
strict. Very strict.
strict. I'm learning English, strict. So very strict about punctuality. And other churches are not very strict. They are kind of, let's just wait. When everybody arrives, that's when we're going to start.
Yeah.
And that is this one particular church that I know. Even if it is a wedding, they're not going to wait for the bride. They're going to start the service on time.
Yep.
So, but it's a church culture as well. Do you know? And everything has to do with value, and it's not
Yeah.
value the task necessarily, but I think that's kind of what it's important. The same way that we've been sometimes being late, we valuing the person, but then on the other side, being on time as
Yeah.
well has to do with valuing the other person as well.
Exactly. And so that kind of goes back to what we talked about before of just being curious and wanting to understand what's behind this cultural preset, this order that we have in this culture of it. This is very important. Why is this important? What are we trying to communicate? It's funny because I one time was teaching an English class and again, we had a lot of variety in that class of where people came from. And just to kind of drive home that point of because it was a cultural orientation class as well. So in English culture, timeliness, has so just to drive that home, we made this agreement together as a class that if anyone was late, we had to walk a lap because at our classroom space, there was kind of a road that does a loop.
I see.
Close by. And so if anyone was late, our whole class had to walk one
Oh my gosh!
lap for each minute that person was late. And I will never forget the first day one of my students was 7 minutes late. And I'm
7 laps.
the meanest teacher ever, but we had to my whole class went and we walked 7 minutes, but no one was late after that. But it wasn't to shame that person. We were very fun and light about it, but it was more just like, no, we're experiencing the culture, and here the culture is very punctual, so we're going to drive that home.
That's a very good way to
And we
to
all got
do it.
really in shape, so it was good.
Good, so you exercise
Doing
and you
purpose.
learn. I think I love that aspect, what you said about curiosity. I think one of the things I've been learning in dealing with different cultures, and actually as well, after I lived in different nations as well, is ask questions.
Yeah.
When I'm invited to someone, I ask questions. And then, should I come on time or should I come a little bit late?
Yeah.
And sometimes, and even the person might gonna have to think about, maybe, because that is never came to their mind. That is assumption when they say you have to be on time or you have to be late. But I just want to say one thing. I remember one situation. I had a friend coming to visit my family. And it was from here, from Europe. And I remember that he asked, what time will be lunch? And then we said, around 11:45, 12. And then he looked at me, 11:45 or 12? And then I said, okay, 12. And then exactly at 12, he came for lunch, and the lunch was not ready. And then he looked at me, oh, it's not ready. How many minutes more you needed to be ready? And I was like, maybe 10 minutes. So he went to his room again, and then he came back 10 minutes late to be able. So I think I've been learning to live with those differences and just be light about it, instead of trying to, my way is the right way or your way is the wrong, or that vice versa.
I think what's really important, as you said, is just asking those questions just so that we understand if I'm on time or if I'm a little bit late or I'm a little bit early, what is that communicating to this person in their culture? And just to have that understanding, especially if you're living in another culture or working cross-culturally or whatever that might be, just to be curious and have that understanding. And I think most of the time when people understand each other, that there's that difference, if they understand that the intention is not to disrespect in any way, then it's a lot easier to understand those differences.